I first heard about the project from Night, I went and watched the series, and I was just overwhelmed in a good way with it because it is so intriguing and it is so unique, and knowing how it would translate to live action I thought would be really special. And it has such a large canvas of the world, and it has the 4 nations, and each of those 4 nations, needs to be developed with the language, with symbols and writing, needs to be developed with societies of people, needs to be developed with architecture and design and environments that they live in, and answering the basic of questions like, how do they sustain themselves? All that has to be thought about in the design and execution in the movie.
One of the biggest challenges that we had was, of course, creating the world. It was a very fortuitous moment when we came to Phil and Judiana and Andrew as sort of the artistic look of the movie and able to then take Night's input and create this world. Once we had it visually and on paper, then we had to figure out how we were going to do it.
Pre-production was the easy part. I started with the conversation with Night and animation as a source material. The challenge at the very beginning was to take the animation and be faithful to the spirit of it, but to set it in a real place.
What do you think of these locations? Does it look like Vietnam?
The very, very beginning of this prep period, which I enjoyed so much, was actually sitting down with Phil and Judiana, Robin props, and just basically all the keys, and we discussed how to make our nations into what they need to be.
We wanted to stick with the colors of the cartoon and the idea of the cartoon, but we didn't want it specifically one nation. In the cartoon, it's sort of more Eskimo or Inuit.
We all decided that they had to look like they're of this world. Like you could meet them, you could go to school with them, although you couldn't. They're completely fantastical. The hard task was to keep them looking like they could be living today amongst us. That is the vision of perfection.
Costumes and makeup in here, not only were they dressing the principals, but we had to dress numerous backgrounds of societies of villagers, Fire Nation soldiers, or war tribe benders. It just didn't start and stop with the actors. There were hundreds and thousands of other costumes, other hairstyles, other wigs, other makeup to be designed.
I'm really loving how it's a lot of mixed races, which is even great too. It's like we've represented almost everybody.
It's represented like it is worldwide. There's a lot of different ethnicities within every different nation, making it a little bit more real, creating a reality behind it to really define the story.
As we developed the aesthetic of the film, we were shying away from any one nationality that was too identifiable. And during that process, we were always trying to shy away from the real straight, iconic Chinese architecture. And then we get to the point like, well, why are we going there if we're trying to use things that are just a little bit oblique?
Phil came, showed me all these images from different books and things that he was inspired by, and it was totally different than what I was thinking, totally different. But his influences were so grounded. He would say, this is from an Arabic kind of influence, and this is from an African influence that I saw over here, the things that we will paint on the walls. And he walked me through it, and I saw this incredible kind of possibility for an international vision of an alternate world that reminded us a lot of our world, but was different.
Because there's a lot of Oriental influence in this film, but it's not an Oriental movie, it's not a Kung Fu movie, it's not a Hong Kong movie, it's not a Chinese movie, but the Oriental elements are extremely present, and they didn't want to make it look like it's a mistake we didn't do the Oriental style.
The world is hugely diverse, and your heroes have different skin colors. What I loved about the show, I didn't know what races everybody was. I mean, everyone saw what they wanted to see in the characters. In my household, Katara was Indian 100%, right? My oldest daughter looks like Katara. So I saw, her as Indian. But you couldn't really put your finger on it, and I love that. I love that about anime in general.
When you back off the animation a little bit, you think that there's a complete world there, but once you start getting into the details, the animation just doesn't have that, just because of limitations of it. So it's about not only fleshing out the details, but then also grounding this place in a very real world.
So it was so cool seeing this team of incredibly talented people with great resources go off and do their version of our world. We always knew it would be a different vision, filtered through these other artists. We got to tell the show the way we wanted to, and now it gets to be a new variant, and that's cool to us.
This is all made up to be our world. You think every single thing on those people, every prop, everything they touch, everywhere they go, everything's been done by us. And they just look like people. I believe it. I believe every single thing in this world, and I thought that was a bigger success we could have achieved together.
In the end, it's actually, I keep saying I feel like I'm doing 4 movies because each nation is a completely different aesthetic, all part of the same puzzle piece, but a very different piece of it. So every time one aspect changed, we had to sort of revisit the others because they all, you know, sort of like the Avatar, they all had to be in harmony with each other.
Keeping balance. That's our job.